Partner with caregivers to create a recovery team. The team of people involved in a person's life can include day support providers, job coaches, employers and coworkers, parents and other caregivers and family members, such as siblings and extended family, friends and other informal support networks, medical professionals, mental health providers such as psychologists, psychiatrists, and social workers, providers and other disability service systems such as case managers, regional centers, and other federal programs, and respite providers. It is important to make a distinction between a recovery team and a treatment team. In mental health culture, a treatment team might be the team in the clinic responsible for a person's care, consisting of a person's treatment providers. In IDD culture, a team is used more for development of a support plan or service plan. By recovery team, we are introducing the idea that people with IDD often have many providers in their life, even prior to a traumatic experience. While we're not suggesting that providers must develop a formal recovery team, it is important for providers to know who are the other professionals in a person's life, and also to find out from the person with IDD or their caregivers who they find most supportive and helpful. Ideally, every member of the team should be striving for the same goals: the person's safety and well-being, and the development and maintenance of a positive and stable home. Each member of the team has distinct roles and responsibilities in the system. The connections that are strong, helpful, weak, or stressful will vary for different people. Some providers working with the person may have close, positive relationships with the person or their caregivers. Others may not be very active or engaged with the person. Still others may be a source of conflict and stress. In creating a recovery team, it can be helpful to know the strengths and quality of those connections. It is unlikely that all providers that a person with IDD and family encounters will be equally trauma-informed. It is important to know that there are gaps in trauma information so that providers can help caregivers create an effective, trauma-informed recovery team. Some members of the trauma team may have histories of their own, or they might be experiencing secondary traumatic stress. Secondary traumatic stress refers to the emotional effects of close contact with people who have experienced trauma, and we'll talk more about this in Module 6. Help adults and caregivers navigate systems of care. Many people with IDD have co-occurring developmental and mental health diagnoses and conditions, which results in their involvement in multiple service systems. Involvement in multiple systems often means having to deal with obstacles in systems. Sometimes the role of the provider is to help the person and their caregivers deal with the frustration and challenges of wait lists and lack of availability of formal supports, provide tools and ideas to help with uncertainty, and provide resources for what they can do while they wait. In the United States, most public and private mental health, rehabilitation, and disability healthcare funding sources are allocated based on categorical diagnoses, which may not match the person's needs, and are segregated into separate financial silos. There are many instances when needed services may be denied by insurance companies or public agencies who ping-pong the person back and forth to avoid covering care for the person with complex issues. When services are approved, providers with the needed skills, such as trauma-informed treatment or autism-specific treatment, may not be available. This can be a resource strain on providers, given that successful trauma work with this population requires advocacy and education of providers within those systems. In this module, we are discussing strategies that enhance well-being and resilience. We've been discussing ways to respond to trauma. Another important factor in enhancing the well-being and resilience of adults with IDD and their caregivers is to actively resist using policies and practices that might re-traumatize people with IDD, their caregivers, and providers, such as the use of restraints and seclusions, or behavior supports focused on compliance and control, and instead institute policies and practices to help them recover and thrive. Person-centered planning provides a process for bringing a person and their caregiving team together to discuss the person's hopes and dreams. Person-centered planning is a strength-based process that is a celebration of the person and a mechanism of establishing the commitment of the team members to support the person's goals. It's about listening to the person no matter how he or she communicates and finding out what's important to them. A plan should integrate requirements and goals across agencies and should not merely be a behavior management plan. This will be discussed in more detail in Module 5. Positive Behavior Supports, or PBS, is a set of evidence-based strategies used to increase quality of life and decrease problem behavior by making changes in a person's environment and teaching new skills. PBS has been effectively used with individuals with IDD and mental health needs. PBS applies behavior science in a way that is different from behavior management. PBS starts with the premise that individuals are coping in the most effective way that they know. The PBS approach is a change to environment so that individuals can get their needs met and teach skills so that they have more effective tools to meet their needs or cope when they can't. The behaviors that contribute to development of a secure base that serve as a protective factor are the same behaviors that need to be ramped up in the aftermath of trauma. Gentle teaching is an approach developed in the 1980s by John McKee to interact with people with IDD and challenging behavior. It has since expanded as an effective approach for people with mental illness, older persons, and children, and it's grown an international following. Its basic premise is that challenging behavior is a reflection of life experience, often characterized by absence of quality of life and/or trauma. It focuses on how supporters can interact in ways that improve the quality of life of the person with IDD through meaningful and reciprocal relationships. The goal of gentle teaching is for the individual to feel safe, loved, loving, and connected. Relationships are understood in gentle teaching as transacted in repetitive micro-behaviors using the tools of our hands, touch, eyes, voice, and presence. These tools and how they can be used are accessible to caregivers as well as providers to communicate, "You're safe with me," "It's good to be with me," "It's good to be loved," and be loving. Positive identity development and levels of happiness have been introduced by Dr. Karen Harvey as an effective way to promote healing. Understanding levels of happiness, addressed in her book, Positive Identity Development, provides markers that can easily be used to help create a safe yet meaningful life. It involves both therapy and a positive behavioral approach. It is based on the integration of two schools of psychology, positive psychology by Dr. Martin Seligman and existential psychology by Viktor Frankl. Positive identity development for people with IDD focuses on discovering, defining, and celebrating the self versus taking on the sole identity of disabled. People with IDD not only see themselves as disabled, but also as the bad one due to behaviors, the dumb one, the one who can't read, the one who talks funny, the one who can't ride a bike, the one who can't drive a car, the one who can't. The premise of positive identity development is focusing on psychological well-being versus maladaptive behaviors, which leads to human health and authentic happiness. Dr. Harvey identifies levels of happiness as key to determining behavioral change and adjustment. Oftentimes, people with IDD are given the feedback that they cannot impact their environment in any significant way, which can lead to learned helplessness. This happens when an individual's attempts at controlling their environment are repeatedly thwarted until they become passive and the individuals perceive themselves as helpless. Many people with IDD respond to their sense of helplessness by acting out in passive or passive-aggressive ways, and then are labeled as non-compliant. In Authentic Happiness, Dr. Martin Seligman outlines 3 levels of happiness. Pleasure are things we enjoy in a predominantly happy state, such as eating or watching TV. Most people need some pleasure in their life, but people who get most of their leisure enjoyment from this passive pleasure level are more prone towards depression. It's notable that often primary reinforcers or rewards used in behavioral programs are at this level. Engagement is actually engaging in something pleasurable. It requires activity on the part of the participant, such as cooking, camping, or hiking. It creates a feeling of total absorption that is more satisfying than passive pleasure. Engagement in pleasurable activities also develops skills and talents. The increase in happiness is related to the development of one's own skills and strengths. And finally, meaning, the act of making a real difference in the world of others through using one's own strengths, particularly strength of character. Seligman found that those who experience their lives as having meaning and purpose, and feel that they are contributing in some way to the world around them, have the greatest level of fulfillment and happiness. Like typically developing people, people with IDD also benefit more from engagement than pleasure, and most from meaning and purpose. Dr. Harvey has developed a number of counseling techniques and forms and workbooks for increasing positive identity development to be completed with clients, which accompany her book, Positive Identity Development, an alternative treatment approach for individuals with mild and moderate intellectual disabilities. Available forms and workbooks include the Psychological Needs Survey, the Happiness Assessment, the Change Inventory, Behavior Planning Template, My Book About Myself, My Goodbye Book, My Book About Recovery, My Book About Solving Problems, My Book About Making a Difference, My Book About My Relationship, and My Book About Addiction. Materials are available to download and print at the NADD. As a recap, let's review the essential messages that we just discussed in Module 4. Essential Message 6. Utilize an IDD and trauma-informed, person-centered approach to support both the adult with IDD and their caregivers. Essential Message 7. Help caregivers and other professionals in the person's life strengthen protective factors. Here are some things that you as a provider can do to address the concepts that we discussed in Module 4. Identify and enhance strengths and natural supports. Ask about the trauma and what they need. Take the time to listen to and ask them about their questions, concerns, and challenges. Provide practical tools for promoting a secure attachment and a healing and protective environment. Provide anticipatory guidance. Help access support. Help find access to respite care. Think about the person you identified at the end of Module 1 who connects you to this work. What can help them and other people with IDD who have experienced trauma? Let's take a few minutes to think about what you can do specifically in your role and at your organization to address any one of these points. Next, you'll complete Action Planning Essential Messages 6 and 7. This is your opportunity to think about how you're going to implement the ideas that we just discussed in Module 4 into your daily practice as soon as you get back to your office. You will see that it outlines specific strategies for things that you can do to address the essential messages. These strategies were written in SMART objective format: specific, measurable, achievable, results-oriented, and timely. Mark an X in up to 3 boxes next to the ideas that you think you would most like to emphasize in your daily practice for the essential messages. If you'd like to create your own strategy using SMART objective format, you're welcome to do that as well.